Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 8 of the Chroncast. I am joined by Alex Rickman. We would be joined by Ryan Gurevitz, our usual host, but he is currently searching for his father across the U.S. Northeast wasteland. So instead we had to get Kyle from the Nuckstalk and Canucks Way to take his place. Say hello, Kyle.
Hey guys, welcome, and thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks
for coming on, man.
Alex, do you want to get us started with round 1 preview, maybe?
Of course. Today, assuming that we get this out before the game starts, the Canucks will be taking on the Nashville Predators in Game 1 of first round of the postseason. Kyle, you got any thoughts on the matchup for us?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the West is a pretty big gauntlet this year. You know, I don't really see any super weak team, even if you are first place. Obviously, Dallas gets the defending Stanley Cup champs in round 1 there. So, and personally, in my view, this was probably the best matchup for Vancouver, and that's not saying a lot. Nashville's been one of the hottest teams since the All-Star break, and they obviously have one of the best defenders in the world in Josi and great goaltending in Saros. And Philip Forsberg hit 48 goals this year. So obviously a pretty tough matchup. Canucks went 3-0 against Nashville this year. So you can kind of rest or take a little bit of that obviously into the playoffs. But reality is regular season doesn't matter anymore. So obviously a pretty exciting first home game in over 3,200 days for the Canucks, home playoff game that is. And, building will probably be buzzing, but yeah, I mean, curious to see what you guys think and where this team matches up with the Nashville Predators.
Yeah, like you said, players like Josi and Saros will be obviously a challenge to deal with, although we have the perfect counterpoint in guys like Demko and Hughes. But I'm really looking forward to watching the hockey in this series. I think no matter what, this is going to be a lot of exciting hockey to watch. One thing I'm really looking forward to is the physicality that both these teams' blue lines can bring, especially with the way that some Canucks defenseman, Tyler Myers in particular, has shown an ability to step up his physicality in playoff games throughout his career. So I'm looking forward to some hard-hitting hockey. Going to be kind of sad watching Luke Schenn throw hits against the Canucks this time, but still looking forward to watching what we have to see. Zach, anything from you?
Yeah, it's all surface level analysis for me, to be honest, but I'm intrigued to see if the guys who are in the bubble playoff, if the experience from there carries over, if it just feels like a totally different environment where they have to be in the playoffs for the first time once again.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Not many guys on our roster have played playoff games in front of a crowd. Obviously, a lot of them have played playoff games through the bubble or elsewhere in their career with actual experience. You look at a guy like Ian Cole, who has, I believe, multiple Stanley Cup rings. But yeah, definitely going to be interesting to see how guys adapt. Kyle, any players you want to particularly keep an eye on going into this series?
Yeah, I think you made a really good point there, listing Tyler Myers as someone who's going to be a bit more physical in the playoffs and maybe not get as many calls just for being bigger than players out there. A guy who I look at also being pretty physical and someone who can be kind of an X factor there on the blue line is Zadorov. We've already seen his physicality in the regular season. I know he's already had a couple game misconducts there, but I think his physicality, net front presence too, boxing out, is going to come really big into the playoffs. And obviously he has some experience as well. As you said as well, not a ton of playoff experience for guys like Hughes and Pettersson. Obviously Hoglander, kind of our younger players there who've shown really well this year. So I think, it's funny, Ryan Kessler was on a couple podcasts this week and radio shows. I don't know if you guys saw that, but I think Miller's going to be a really big X factor as well. Kind of being that Kessler-esque player, getting on their opponent's skin, but also matching up against top lines and actually producing. So, I think there's a lot of things, that are up in the air. And obviously you have kind of the biggest X factor there in net with Demko, you get playoff Demko again. This team's probably going to go really far.
Of course. And another guy I want to look at is, I think, Elias Pettersson, because as we've all seen in recent weeks, he has kind of struggled to produce, but we all know the player that he can be, and if you get that Elias Pettersson, I think between him and Lindholm as well, our center depth could become one of our biggest assets going into this postseason.
Absolutely.
But yeah, moving on from that, we should talk about what else is going on in the playoffs away from Vancouver. So I'm just going to run through the rest of the postseason series that we have to watch, and let's go through what we think may happen in any of these. So starting in the Western Conference, let's go with the other Pacific Division series between the Edmonton Oilers and the Los Angeles Kings. Any thoughts on this?
Zach, you want to take it away, or?
I don't really have any thoughts, to be honest. I'm just going to slightly favor the Oilers. I feel like they've played well against the Kings in the past.
Yeah, I think this is actually the third time these two teams are matching up in the first round in a row
Mm,
here. So I believe Oilers have won both in six. I don't know if that's actually correct, but I believe that is.
sounds right.
And so, yeah, I think I would go with the Oilers as well.
Yeah.
Definitely happy we're not playing the Kings with that 1-3-1 pretty boring style
Oh
of
my
hockey.
god.
So, yeah, it should be a good series again. And but yeah, I have the Oilers winning this one as well.
Yeah, I'm the same as you guys. I think Edmonton are better at breaking down the Kings' defense than almost anyone in the league. I just don't really see. It's the playoffs and anything can happen, but I don't really see a logical way for the Kings to end up taking this one. I think another Oilers in 6 could be on the way here.
Yeah,
Staying in the West, let's go to the Central Division. Let's talk about the Avs and the Jets.
yeah. I mean, every matchup in the West is a really good one, and
Mm.
this could be easily a semifinal or even in the second round. Super competitive teams. Obviously, a
Mm.
lot of star power with McKinnon and McCarr on the Avs, and you got Kyle Connor and Scheifele and Ehlers on the Jets. This one's a toss up. I
Mm.
might go Avs in 7 here. I don't know. I think Avs are pretty dangerous, and Nathan McKinnon obviously has had an insane year, and I think he's only going to get better in the playoffs.
Yeah, Zach, anything to say on this one?
No, I think you guys pretty much had everything I would say.
Yeah, like Kyle said, this one could go either way. I expect a 7-game series here. I'm also going to pick the Avs, but I would not be at all surprised to see this one go either way.
Yeah,
How about
absolutely.
the Yeah. How about the series between the Dallas Stars and the Vegas Golden Knights?
Yeah, I mean another series that could easily have been the conference final there.
Mm-hmm.
These could easily be the top two teams in the Western Conference. Obviously, Dallas has proven that over the regular season they're one of the best teams in the league. I think from 1 to 18 in terms of their roster, I think they're one of the deepest teams in the league, and obviously
Mm-hmm.
they have star power of themselves with Ottinger, Heiskanen, Robertson, even Ben and Sagan can have their moments as well. And then obviously the Stanley, the defending Stanley Cup champs in Vegas, they're only getting healthier. Obviously Stone's probably coming back. Petrieangelo coming back. They
Mm.
added Hannafin and Hurdle at the deadline. So that's a pretty scary team. That's a roster that can
Yeah.
win the cup again. So again, I see this going the distance to 7. And, maybe just because I don't like Vegas, I'll say Dallas. But I would not be surprised if it went Vegas's way.
Yeah. Zach, anything?
Yeah, I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to slightly favor Vegas just because whatever voodoo magic they have in their medical department scares me because they always seem to get people from season-threatening injuries to ready for the first game of the playoffs. Just look at Mark Stone.
Yeah, it's a miracle.
Almost as miraculous as the last 7 times. But yeah, I really see, like you guys have said, this one I do see going the distance. It's a toss-up of a series if there ever has been one. I slightly favor Dallas, but again, this one is so hard to call. Moving into the East, let's talk about a team that has an old friend of the Canucks. Let's talk about the New York Islanders playing against the Carolina Hurricanes. What do you guys think here?
Yeah, I mean, I think looking just at the standings in the regular season, obviously New York didn't have the greatest season there. I do think Carolina. I mean, they've been in the conference final, 3 out of the last 4 years in the East.
Mm-hmm.
There, they just haven't broken through. So I'm going to go with Carolina, probably in 5 or 6 games here. I just think they're a better roster through and through, and if they get good goaltending, especially from Freddie Anderson, they could be real dangerous. Obviously New York has some players as well: Horvat, Barzal, Dobson, Pulak. Yeah, I'm going to go with Carolina. I think they're just a better team.
Zach?
Yeah, I'll probably agree as well, but I mean, this could be one of the matchups where playoff hockey is pretty much.
Yeah. You never know in the postseason, but I do, again, favor the Canes. I think this could be maybe a 5-game series or something like that. The Islanders don't, on paper, have the best roster, but again, in the playoffs, you never know what's going to happen. But they're one of few teams in the playoffs that I believe has a negative goal difference on the season. May need fact checking on that, but I believe they had a negative goal difference, so I don't really see an easy way for the Isles to get through the Canes here. Let's move on to the Battle of Florida. What do we think is going to happen in that series, which I'm really looking forward to watching?
Yeah, what a series that's going to be. And, I think both two really good teams. Tampa obviously had kind of their little dynasty run, making 3 Stanley Cups in a row. Unfortunately, losing to the Leafs last year, but their roster obviously is kind of coming to the tail end, perhaps, of some of their bigger players. I know Stamkos is a unrestricted free agent this offseason. Kucherov's had a fantastic year, as well as Point, and obviously Vasilevsky is one of the top goaltenders in the world. On the other end, then you have Florida, who's one of the deepest rosters in the league. Obviously, went to the Stanley Cup final last year. Kachuk, Ekblad, Montour. They have a really, really good team. Probably go with Florida. Go with Florida probably in 6 games. I just think they're the better roster. I do think that all these extra playoff games that Tampa has played the last 4 or 5 seasons do accumulate. And I just think Florida might have a little bit of extra pep in their step just due to that. And I know they obviously went on a long run last year, but quite a few of their players were kind of sitting out, nursing injuries start the season. So I think they're going to be ready to go.
Yeah. Zach, anything from you?
No, I pretty much just agree with what Kyle said.
Yeah.
The playoffs have to catch up at some point with just how many extra games you have each time.
And how physical those games are, especially. But yeah, kind of like you guys said, I do think the Panthers will take this. I think this is going to be a really hotly contested series, though. These teams really do not like each other at all, so I think this is going to be some exciting hockey to watch, even if it does favor one team over the other. Moving on from that, how about the Rangers and the Capitals?
Yeah, I feel like this one is maybe the easiest one to pick out of the bunch here. Obviously, I believe I'm looking here on NHL. Washington had a negative 37 goal differential this year. They still have Ovechkin. But that being said, I think Rangers are one of the best teams in the league. Ton of depth, ton of high end scoring, good goaltender, good defense, good coach. I'm going to go Rangers in 5 here, and I'm locking that one in.
Yeah, Zach.
I'll go Rangers in 4. I'm feeling adventurous today.
Yeah, I'm feeling kind of similar to what you guys are thinking, in that the Rangers are clearly the far superior team here, maybe the best team in the NHL versus a Capitals team that was very much a fringe playoff team, having to clinch in game 82. The one hope for Washington, maybe if Charlie Lindgren can keep his hot play up, maybe they can find a way to get through the Rangers, but that's asking a lot, I think, for them to get through. I'm going to say Rangers in 5, like Kyle did. And finally, everyone's favorite series, the Leafs and the Bruins. Anyone?
Well, obviously a nice little gift yesterday there with the Bruins beating the Leafs 5-1. Love to see that. And I mean, I think it would just be a little foolish to bet on the Leafs beating the Bruins, knowing history here. So I'm going to go Bruins in 6. I think the Bruins are just built for the playoffs. They got the better goaltender. They got the better defensive core. I think they have better depth. No, obviously Matthews is a problem. Still have Marner. I believe Nylander was injured yesterday too, so that's a big loss for them. And Tavares. They have good forwards, but fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice. Fool me 3 times, can't get fooled again. So I'm going to go Bruins.
Zach, what are your thoughts?
Well, I was originally going to go Bruins by reverse sweep, but game 1 did ruin that plan, so I think I'll just go Bruins in 5.
Ooh, 5's an interesting call there. Like you guys, I don't really see the Leafs getting through this. I think they're going to see ghosts again like they have in most first rounds in years past. I am going to go for the traditional Bruins beating the Leafs in 7 games, just because, I think history has a way of repeating itself in the playoffs at times, but I'm excited to watch this, mainly because I like watching the Leafs lose. And I'll enjoy watching the Bruins lose in the second round, hopefully, after this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, moving off of the playoffs now, we should focus on a bit of Canucks news that came out this week. Vasiliy Podkolzin has been signed to a 2-year, $1 million annual salary extension. Any thoughts on the move by the Canucks front office?
Yeah, I think, obviously they signed Hoglander to a very similar deal last offseason there with 2 years, I believe, at $1.1 million. A low-risk bet. Vasiliy Podkolzin will still be an RFA at the end of the contract, so they still kind of retain his contractual rights there. I think it's a solid bet. I mean, obviously, looking at Hoglander, what he's done this year, I think the management probably is pretty inclined to kind of do the same thing with Pods. Now, I'm not sure if Podkolzin will have necessarily the same statistical breakout that Hoglander did, but he does bring kind of another element there with his physicality and his kind of hard-nosed play on the forecheck. So I think it's a great move, low risk, obviously, and kind of allows Vasiliy Podkolzin to develop at the NHL level with not too much pressure on there. You see some chatter about setting him maybe longer term, trying to bet on his upside there. But I think that's just a risk that they didn't need to take, and you do a short two-year prove-it deal and see where it goes. I like the move.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of how he's played this year. I really love the energy he brings to the lineup in particular. I know the offense hasn't come yet, but I do think that is still able to come. I doubt that he's ever going to be like a top 6 piece, but I think he can be a really solid depth guy, and I think this is a great contract to let him prove that he can do that at the NHL level. Zach, any thoughts from you?
No, you two pretty much hit everything I say. It's nice, low risk, high reward.
Fair enough, and I know he's one of your favorite players, so I wanted to see if you had anything to say on that matter, but yeah.
There is currently a smile plastered on my face for those who are not currently watching the recording.
And, okay, so moving off of the Canucks, we'll just do one more hockey topic, and then Kyle will let you go about your day. The Arizona Coyotes move to Utah has been officially completed and announced by the NHL. Any initial thoughts on what's going to happen next from this?
Well, kind of initial thought, it's kind of about time, isn't it? You can't be playing one of the professional sports in an arena with 2,500 people there. I think that's just absurd. And obviously, you feel bad for kind of the players there. And what I've heard is that the Arizona staff and equipment managers and medical staff that are tier 1. So obviously, you feel bad for everyone there, kind of changing. But yeah, I think it was about time, and obviously Utah's going to acquire a pretty nice young team with a ton of draft capital. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Arizona or Utah, whatever you want to call them right now, make some pretty big splashes in the offseason to really try and garner some publicity for their first year there. Obviously there's some questions. Maybe do some divisions get realigned? Where do some other teams stand perhaps in the NHL in terms of relocating? But I think it was due time, and I think Gary Bettman kind of realized that his experiment didn't really work there in the desert.
Yeah, I'm still a believer that Arizona can be a good hockey market, but frankly, I don't think it was going to work with how much of a mess this organization was for years of its existence. So it's good to get it into the hands of a new owner in a new market. I really like what Ryan Smith has been saying, at least early on. I think he has the potential to be really good new era owner for the sport. But ultimately, yeah, I don't think it was going to work in Arizona. It's been inevitable that this was going to happen for a few years now. So I'm hoping at some point down the line they can get another team back. I'm not necessarily a fan of how the league is planning to do things by trying to get them back within 5 years with Alex Meruelo still as the owner. But I do really think that this is going to be a good move in the long run for the league. Zach?
I'm honestly intrigued to see how both Arizona and Utah work as just markets themselves, because I could see Utah not being I can't imagine Utah is the top of any free agents list unless they're from Utah. But also Arizona, I can't imagine getting too much interest back, especially if they're back in 5 years under the same fiscally irresponsible Bill Payer that they had the first time. So I can't imagine both are going to be like the cream of the crop type markets if they return.
Yeah.
Also, just to add on, to the Arizona kind of fiasco, I mean, you've heard stories of, them not paying hotel bills and stuff like that. So obviously that has nothing to do with like the players or the fans. That's just more, I guess, the owner and management, right? So that's what's kind of unfortunate, to me is, obviously probably not the largest hockey fan base down in Arizona, but certainly big enough to sustain a franchise. If, franchise can survive in Columbus, or even Winnipeg is a very small market too. Yeah. But I don't know. I think it's kind of unfortunate, and obviously, Bettman might need to vet owners and a little bit better. Hopefully, Utah is a good one.
Yeah, looking forward to how that goes. With that, I think we're going to move off of hockey talk. So I'd like to thank Kyle from Nuckstalk for coming on the show. Please check out his work at Nuckstalk on Instagram and at the Canuck Way where he's writing. Thank you for coming on, Kyle.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. And go Canucks, go.
Go Canucks. So moving away from hockey now, we have the NFL draft this weekend. Thought we would touch on that. I myself, for those unaware, I'm a big Seattle Seahawks fan, so have some opinions on this. However, before we get into that, as you know, Ryan cannot be here as he is looking for his father in the northeastern wasteland of the United States. I believe I got that right. Ryan is a New England Patriots fan. So Ryan sent me his thoughts in text on the Patriots draft, which I will now read to you now. We are in a position where we need basically everything, but I'm hoping we can get a quarterback. Would be ideal to avoid Drake May, as I think he's got high bust potential, and if we draft JJ McCarthy, I'm going to start paying for TSN Plus and watching Super Rugby. So, let's just quickly analyze this. He wants a quarterback, but he's very particular about who. The Michigan fan does not want the Michigan quarterback. I personally believe that if I was in Ryan's shoes, the guy I would want would be Jaden Daniels. Knowing Caleb Williams will be the first quarterback off the board, he's not going to be there for you. I think Jaden Daniels is the guy who, if I was a team in need of a quarterback that desperately and picking that high, I would be all over this guy. But as for the Seahawks, what I am hoping for is somebody who plays a line. I do not care which one, offensive or defensive. Few names that stand out to me on the offensive side of the ball would be Troy Fautanu. He is a tackle for Washington. However, he can play guard too, which is, I think, the more pressing need for the Seahawks offensive line. Or Duke offensive lineman Graham Barton, who I believe can play every position across the O-line. Also projected first-round pick. Whereas on defense with the first-round pick, I'd like to see someone like Byron Murphy from Texas, or perhaps Jerzon Newton, who is a defensive lineman from Illinois, alma mater, former teammate of Devin Witherspoon, who should have been Defensive Rookie of the Year. Zach, anything from you on the draft? Anything you'd like to say?
I just have a quick question, actually, for the Seahawks fan here.
Of course.
Is the coaching staff for the Lions known as being like able to polish well, or is it a bit leaving something to be desired?
Well, before it's really hard to say, because I think last year we had a lot of injuries along the line, which did not help things, and in previous years we just weren't drafting linemen high. We didn't seem to prioritize it, despite it having been a weak spot for the past decade. But now we have a new coach, obviously, who brought with him a new staff. So I'm not really sure what the new coaching staff is going to be like. I believe our offensive line coach was the offensive line coach for the University of Washington last year. They won, I forget what the award is called, but the award for best offensive line in the country in college football. So I'm optimistic about what they can do if they draft, especially a guy like Fautanu, or with the later round pick, someone like Roger Rosengarten, who was another member of that Washington O-line. Yeah, I'm not really sure what they can do as a coaching staff yet, just because we haven't had him in for long enough to go deep into what they can do. But yeah, I'm quite interested to see how it goes, and I'm really hoping we can get some help, because it feels like for years now our quarterbacks have just been getting killed in big games. And honestly, you know what one big thing that'll help that is the retirement of Aaron Donald. Because for years the Rams have just killed us whenever we played them, just completely suffocated our offense because nobody can stop him because he is a force of nature. Now that he's gone, the job of an offensive lineman in the NFC West has just gotten that little bit easier.
Yeah, you no longer have to face just an industrial kitchen fridge twice a year, so your life does get a lot easier.
Yeah, it's kind of like lining up across from a Ford F-150.
Yeah.
Like, he can just drive over you like you are absolutely nothing to you. I don't know if you remember this, but there was a soundbite from, I believe it was the Seahawks home opener this year, where he got free up the middle. Geno Smith yelled, "Oh my God," and then threw the ball away right away.
That sums up any, like, prodigious defensive talent.
Yeah, it's
especially Aaron Donald.
It's really the wise decision to make with Aaron Donald there. Moving away to talk about Aaron Donald, I just want to talk about, as a Washington fan, what I'm hoping for two Washington guys in the draft. First of all, the one who's projected to go off the board first is wide receiver Rome Odunze. Projected to be one of the first few receivers off the board. It seems like Marvin Harrison will be first, and then it's between a few guys, Malik Neighbors and Odunze, to be second off the board. What I am hoping for Odunze, because I love this man, I really want him to go somewhere that has a quarterback. So I've seen a lot of mock drafts having him go to, like, the New York Giants. I do believe that the New York Giants are in desperate need of a wide receiver, because for years they've been trying to get their franchise quarterback and given him nothing to throw to. However, I can't say I'm a little bit worried, because Daniel Jones has never really had a receiver to throw to, so I can't judge too harshly. But the results have not always been great from him, so I do wonder what that's going to be like. But wherever Odunze goes, I just want him to have somebody who can get him the ball. Whereas with a guy like Michael Penix is an interesting case, because he has been kind of sliding down mock drafts a little bit. I've seen some, these are not necessarily the highest quality of mock drafts, having him go below a guy like Bo Nix now even. Penix, as a Seahawks fan, is actually somebody I would be quite interested to see us get. I don't know that it'll happen now that we've traded for Sam Howell. I think he's probably going to take the backup role, and he's also a younger quarterback. But I really want to see Penix go somewhere good. This man can thrive in an NFL offense, I'm sure. I've heard a quote, a good quarterback can hit a door frame from 30 yards out. A great quarterback can hit a doorknob. Michael Penix can hit the keyhole from 30 yards out.
So he's a very accurate one.
His arm is just ridiculous. Just some of the throws he was making last year, especially in big situations, he's not human sometimes. Just a force of nature. Any final thoughts on the draft, or do you want to just move on to the next topic?
I think you're the only one here who has done any film study on it, so if you have anything you want to say, you got the floor.
Not really a whole lot that I can think of here. Apart from my thoughts go out to any teams that plan to draft a quarterback with the top pick without any wide receivers in their system to throw to, because look at what has happened to Bryce Young with the Panthers.
Yeah.
Please get that man some help right now. But moving on from the NFL, let's focus on the other football and our Vancouver Whitecaps FC, who yesterday went to Seattle and won a game against the Sounders at Lumen Field for the first time since Barack Obama was president of the United States. Zach, how are we feeling after this win?
It's definitely some confidence, even if it was buoyed by the fact that the Seattle Sounders got confused as to which football they were playing and decided to just have some rugby tackles going on.
Yeah, the tackling in that game was very MLS, I find, and that's not a good thing. If you were not watching, Seattle ended up getting 2 players sent off, both for attempted murders, one on Ryan Gauld near the end of the first half, one on Ali Ahmed in the 74th minute when it was already a 2-0 game. Sounders fans have been complaining about the referees, but I complain about Sounders fans a lot, so really, who's right there? But yeah, this is just such a confidence builder for the Whitecaps. I went into this season kind of unsure of what I thought, but the Whitecaps currently sit top of the West. Now, the LA Galaxy do have a game in hand and have a very good shot to take back top spot tonight. But with how the Whitecaps have been playing right now, they're playing like a top team in the league. And I really want to give some credit to the guys out there because this has been incredible to watch as a fan after years of mediocrity. We really needed a big result that game, I think, and we got it. I'm excited, too, we play Seattle again in about a month in Seattle. Really looking forward to that one. I think that'll be a hotly contested game, especially after us finally getting a win there. And I also want to give some credit to the Whitecaps fans who traveled down in less than ideal circumstances. Zach, you heard about this, I believe?
Yes, so the Vancouver Southsiders are basically our equivalent of an ultras section, and they hired out a Greyhound-type bus to get down to Lumen Field, which broke down, I believe, an hour outside Seattle. And
I think about an hour north is what I heard, yeah.
Yeah. They only made it in time because one of the people on board was an industrial mechanic. So I hope he got all the beer he wanted, or whatever other beverage of his choosing.
Assuming that is the truth, I have not verified this from a Southsider, but that appears to be what happened. If you actually had a guy on board who is a commercial mechanic who fixed your bus to get you there in time for kickoff, in fact, that man should not be paying for a meal or anything on any Seattle trip for the next 5 years, I think. This incredible story. Looking forward, I believe me and you are hoping to travel to the second matchup against the season in Seattle with our friends from Vancouver Albion. Shout out to Mayan Zilberstein, among others. Weekly Mayan mention. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. This feels like a real rivalry right now, which it honestly kind of hasn't for a few years. It feels like mostly just us getting bullied. So really nice to actually go down there and get a result.
Always good to get a result away from home.
Really is, especially in MLS of all leagues. We could talk about other football leagues, but I don't really want to because both of our teams got dumped out of Europe recently, and so did Ryan's. So let's just skip away from that. Shall we go to everyone's favorite segment and wrap things up a little early this week?
I don't see why not. Not a lot happening.
Ladies and gentlemen,
so it'll be a short one too.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for everyone's favorite segment on the Chroncast, the Zach Mason Combat Corner. Zach, you ready to go?
I'm rubbing my hands together like Birdman, baby.
All right. So, last night we saw your 2 favorite boxers on the face of this earth, Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney, face off. I'm being sarcastic if you are unaware. Quite a surprising result in this fight to me as a bit of a casual boxing fan. What do you make of the fight and what comes next for these two?
I it's very strange, to be honest, because like this was supposed to be this big sellout marquee event, and it feels like nothing's really advanced. It's like, imagine an episode of a sitcom where like there's this big hyped up event, this giant part of the story, and then the next episode they refuse to mention it and just all have coffee. That's what it feels like, is because Garcia. So Ryan Garcia won the fight. He did not win the world title belt that was on the line because he missed weight by 3 pounds. And so there's now, in theory, a man in the 140-pound division who has beaten a champion but does not have the championship.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that big elephant in the room for Devin Haney's career, which I'm very intrigued to see where his career goes from here, to be honest, because I flip-flop between being very high on him and not. I probably put a bit too much stock into his previous victory against Regis Prograis, where he had a fantastic defensive performance and knocked down Prograis twice, I believe. But I'm wondering now how he fares against people his size, because he had made a career in the lightweight division being probably 20 pounds heavier than anyone he'd ever fought on the night of the fight. He had this incredible ability to look like he was dying at the weigh-ins, but still make the weight and then show up and look fine. And I wonder where he goes from here, because I can't imagine he can go back down in weight, and he probably shouldn't, just for health purposes, basically, because once you stop doing a cut like that, it becomes very difficult to start it back up again. So he's kind of stuck at 140 now, and I wonder if he's too weak, for lack of a better term, to compete there. Because if you can find someone who can get to him and pressure him who's the same size, I feel like you might be able to walk through him, because he got dropped 3 times in the fight and probably should have had a couple more that were ruled slips, ruled as knockdowns. So he's clearly pretty chinny, to put it nicely. And that had always kind of been a weird hang up on him, because when he fought Jorge Linares in 2021, Linares hit him with, it was a left hook, right hand. And you can see the knees buckle, and the round ends right there. And you can still see him stumbling to the corner, very clearly hurt. So he didn't really have the chin at 135, and he probably doesn't have the chin at 140. Plus, his style is very reserved, so I think he also knows he doesn't have the chin, because he doesn't open up for combinations very much. Like he's
not out there trading with another fighter.
Yeah, he's not going to be in the pocket. You're never going to see Arturo Gatti, Mickey Ward level fight from Devin Haney. Let's put it that way.
It's never going to be like, to just compare to a slightly different sport, it's not going to be like Max Holloway fighting Justin Gaethje at the end there, where they just go to town on each other. He's going to be very restricted in how he fights.
Yeah, like his best wins have always been when he's never let, like the Kambosos fights. I don't even know if he left first gear in those, and he had 25 pounds on Kambosos. So I don't know where, I want to see where he goes, because this could be a very defining fight for him, because I could totally see Pandora's box being opened. And anytime he fights like a fast, athletic puncher, he is up a creek without a paddle. And then speaking of the guy who beat him, I want to see where Ryan Garcia goes from here, because he claimed in the post-fight press conference that he can't make 140 anymore, so he's probably going to have to move up. And the only name that I've heard was him fighting Boots Ennis. And there's a very slim world where I could see that fight actually working in Ryan's favor, but it has to be signed like tomorrow. Because if he comes off the 2 fights with Haney and Tank Davis, he's been in a situation where iron is sharpening iron, and he'll be fighting a guy who hasn't fought it'll have been over a year. So if he's got the sharpness still there, if he can make the weight, he might have a chance. But I feel like the more that fight goes on, the more chance you give Boots Ennis to get back into fighting shape, fighting sharpness, because he has very little resume wise, but holy hell does Boots Ennis pass the eye test. So if that fight happens, the more that fight gets delayed, I feel like the less it'll work out for Garcia.
And just speaking of what happened in the ring between Haney and Garcia, what did you make of the refereeing performance in that fight?
Oh my god, he was awful. Like he took a point away from Garcia for the clinching, which was fair, but there was nothing done to Devin Haney about it. And I'd argue his was even more blatant, especially because he has the reputation for doing it. Like his entire style is jab, jab, clinch. There's very occasionally a right cross that comes behind it, but it's 12 rounds of 120 punches and 60 clinches in the entire fight, pretty much.
Yeah.
So I think not even just this ref, the sport in general really needs to work on how they treat the clinching, because the Marquess of Queensbury rules state that that's not actually allowed. So if there has to be some consistency, there has to be some effort to stop it, because otherwise you're going to have like fighters like Devin Haney, Richardson Hitchens, guys like that who will stink up the joint and then go defend themselves on Twitter saying the sport is hit and not get hit, despite the fact that they barely hit and they're not exactly doing anything that would open them up to be hit. So it's just a very negative way of fighting. And in a sport that's already so niche, you really don't want people who make it about as fun to watch as a colonoscopy.
Hell of a phrase there.
Thank you.
Anything else to add on this, or should we begin wrapping things up?
I'm probably going to, as soon as it ends, I'm going to have an idea of what I want to say, but I don't have anything else I think I can add.
Fair enough. So with that, I think we can wrap up this week's episode of the Chroncast. I am pleased to announce that for the duration of the Canucks playoff runs, we intend to go to weekly episodes as opposed to bi-weekly, so we will be back with you next week, hopefully. Hopefully we will have Ryan back after he's gone to find his father from the northeastern wasteland. We also seriously wish Ryan luck with his exams. Hopefully this goes well for him. We're rooting for you, buddy. Zach, anything you'd like to say to wrap things up?
Not really too much, just, don't do drugs, stay in school, listen to the next episode of the Chroncast, and look both ways before you cross the street.